Good evening. How's it going? Good morning. So, my name is Chevy Morgan. My YouTube channel is called Chevy the Entertainer because I'm here to entertain you. So, my first topic of discussion today is beauty of human connection. Number 2 is the rush of nature walks. 3 is Russia, NATO, news addiction. Number 4, being able to tell when someone is evil. Number 5, human intuition, underrated. So number 1, beauty of human connection. So I woke up this morning in a exceptionally good mood. I was dancing in my underwear. I put on a upbeat song. I was very inspired, and that is mainly due to my old university friend FaceTiming me for 20 minutes, half an hour last night. Out of the blue. We're just messaging a couple of times, and normally I don't really take much pride in messaging people. Like, to me, they're not even human. Like, when you're just texting someone or messaging them on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anything like that, you forget they're human. Like, people lose their value because we're only supposed to be in towns of about 3,000 people. So when you live in big cities, the people are dehumanized. We're not meant to have so many contacts, because otherwise you just start to lose each value, because it's just in our instinct. Like, we forget how much of our character is based on hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, of living in tribes, and these past few hundred years of globalization and technology has radically changed us. And we can't keep up. The technological changes are more rapid than our evolutionary makeup. And it was just incredible. We were discussing in the video, my friend and I, that it's so different when you see someone. Like, when you're just texting or even a phone call, it's not as influential as a video chat. It was because also you wouldn't say normal things. Like, I was being quite brutal with messaging because, I'm just a bit loose. But when we actually see him, I'm like much more formal and kind and, smile. And that changes your speech patterns. Like, what you would text is so different if you're actually being seen. Because when you're seen, it's more humane. So you present yourself in a certain way which actually changes your thought patterns. Like, it's well known, fake it till you make it. Like, if you force a smile in certain context, it actually can encourage a certain state of mind. So it might not matter. But that's not to say you should fake happiness all the time. That's a very common English culture thing to do, is always be like, hiya, how's it going? Oh, it's a bloody beautiful day. It's doing fantastic. Americans, it's like, hello, how are you? How are you going? I am fine. Like, it's not really true to the heart, because, if you're having a bad day, she'd be like, oh, man, I'm having a bad day. I'm not telling me your life story, but, you'd be so surprised if someone's like, g'day, how you going? You're like, oh, pretty shit, just haven't been sleeping much and I don't really have much future, but all good. Have a good day. Try it once or twice in your life. You may end up meeting your lover because they're like, holy cow, this person is so from the heart. And then, so today I went on a huge nature hike with my fiancée, Katya. We went about 40 minutes west of Brisbane to this Mount Glorious. And by golly, the name was very well descripted. there was this incredible diversity of biodynamic wildlife. Like you see all these trees. Like Katya would say, "Oh look, it's hugging this tree, is hugging this other tree." Well, I'm like, actually, that tree is smothering the other tree. It's using its structure for a base, and then it's sucking the resources from that other tree. You know, she's a bit more positive than I am. And it started raining, but because it was in a rainforest, the trees like mainly protected you. So it was like a free umbrella. It was a pretty cool experience. And in those places, when you go on these nature walks, the people you meet, like you got to say hello to each other, and it's like a snowball effect. You just every time you go, it's just like a little more of a rush. You know, every single hello. It's quite beautiful, and they're your people. Like if you're interested in that, you're going to see your people. I mean, I don't know about you, but like, I'm a little bit lonely. So when I go to those nature hikes, I see people who also appreciate nature hikes, and I'm like, a brother from another mother. It's nice. And you can't really tell online. Like when you look at a photo of a nice bush, you're like, yeah, sick, trees and shit, fantastic. But when you actually go there, you really, like you come alive. Some things cannot be described with words. The English language, it was designed for trade. It was designed for European and Latin countries to sell spices and slaves and jewelry and coal and tobacco, tea, silk. And so it's not really designed for poetry, philosophy, psychology, intuitive properties. So sometimes it's hard to articulate how you're feeling because words derive thought, and those words were designed for mullah, for money-making reasons. So that's why us English genetics people, I mean, we're good at trade, we're good at taking over other countries and, extorting wealth, but we're not the best spiritually. You know how, like even the French, like they have some good things going, you know? They're a little bit more, I know they have these terminologies for like a person who's like wandering, like not in a derogatory sense, like a poetic person that just kind of sits by a lake a lot and has a cigarette and thinks about the meaning of life. Like that's like it's an acceptable person. Because I mean, not everyone is supposed to invent a SpaceX. But then again, if everyone's just chilling by the lake, smoking darts, thinking about the meaning of life, then you wouldn't have this beautiful technology in front of us right now, which gives the ability to communicate. I mean, half the reason why I've got a bit of a personality is because of technology. I mean, I was able to listen to music and watch movies and audiobooks and ebooks when I was homeschooled as a teenager instead of studying. And it's who I am. Like those artists have infected my brain and taught me how to think. So, I've already gone to the number 2, the rush of nature walks. Okay. Yeah, so basically it's like a huge rush. And afterwards you feel more inspired. Like when you first, well not me because I've done it heaps, but when I first started going, like years ago, I was like, what is this crap, you know? Like, how am I going to gain from this? I'm not making any money off this. It's not the hugest workout in the world. But some things just cannot be, you can't value everything in the economic sense. I know some people, they judge every single one of their actions on how it will improve them economically or socially. Like they're constantly like a Sims character trying to bump up their status points. But this is related to my later point, but some things are written on your body. So like you may go for a nature hike and all that connection with nature and stuff, you can't visibly see straight away, but there's something changed in you. Like those little trees have like given you like a little bit of magic. And you're going uphill, so you're getting a good work out in your legs, and it's a great date idea, and you don't spend any money. We're joking around. I could always feel a heightened sense of love with my partner after a good nature hike. But you have to be in a good mood. You have to be, charismatic. You can't just be quiet when you're on the hike, because obviously, it's not enough. You have to be charming as well. You can't just rely on the destination. I mean, I bet you there's billionaires out there that take their loved one to a snazzy restaurant or, wild sex show, and it's not that exciting because they're not that good company themselves. You can't rely on exterior stimuli in order to impress your lover. You have to come from the heart, brother. So I think go back to my first point. When I came back, the first point was beauty of human connection. When I came back from the nature hike, my neighbour was trying to fix the blades of his lawnmower, and then we had a 15-minute conversation, and I really enjoyed that. It was like nice butter on hot toast, and it's undervalued. Just that human connection, just seeing him face to face, and my brain started working because I had a large coffee on the way to the hike, but I never really felt like a motor mouth. I never really felt like a sense of chemical stimulation. But then when I came back and I chatted to him, I felt everything kick in. I felt the power. So it's different. When you chat to your partner, it's different to a mate, a friend, an associate, a random, because I spent 6 years talking to her every night. She knows everything. She knows every single freckle on my face. I mean, obviously learning new things, but there's something special about talking to someone you don't know that well. Like Vivian Lee said in Streetcar Named Desire, always depend on the kindness of strangers. So since I've already kind of touched on number 2, the rush of nature walks, I'm going to go to the third point, which I'm dreading. Russia, NATO, news addiction. One of the first things my friend last night said to me on the FaceTime, and my neighbour was about, oh boy, how's that crazy Ukraine-Russia situation? And I've got different opinions to the majority, because the mainstream corporate news in Australia, it always paints Russia as the big bad guy, because we need an enemy. And because the COVID situation seems to be slowing down, people need a new fear. I was living with this gentleman a few months ago, and he was so addicted to the news. He was so addicted to the news. If he could get the news, roll up his sleeve, and inject the news into his veins, he'd do it on a nightly basis. You know what I mean? And it was sad because this man lived in a $3-4 million home. He had 5 cars. He's retired for 10 years, but he just 7, 9, 10, ABC, SBS, the corporate mainstream news in Australia was his baby. It was his lover. It was his sole reason for existence. His stimulation, his friend, his enemy, all wrapped up in one nice little ribboned present. And it's just not right, because they're a for-profit business. And ethics is not their main responsibility, because I did a bit of journalism at university, and the core facets of journalism is supposed to be ethical consequences. It should be in the forefront of your mind. If it's business comes before ethics, it's not going to be an economic positive, because eventually people are going to mistrust the news and they're going to get their fix on something else. You're only going to have the people who are already firmly addicted. You're not going to get any new recruits. And the problem is, people get really addicted to fear, because fear is the world's most addictive drug. Because think about it. if you can replicate that feeling of being chased by a different tribe who want to skin you and put your head on a spike and then drink soup out of your skull, if you can replicate that feeling in your own home, on your giant couch in your living room by yourself, why wouldn't you? Because it's releasing some chemicals in your brain, like be switched on, like what coffee does. Coffee tricks you to thinking you're under attack. It activates a flight or fight response in your brain. And of course that's addictive. It's the world's most addictive, most favourite drug is coffee, because it replicates the feeling of being scared. And that's why I think it's a bit sad when I see this documentary on coffee. And I've seen around the world like a lot of children are given coffee, and that's not good at all. Because when I was a kid, I didn't have any caffeine, and I was already like, the imagination was so strong. Like up until I was a late teen, my imagination was so strong. Like I remember being a wee boy, like the age of about 13, 12, 11, in Masok in South Korea, just a few hours inland from Seoul. And we didn't have any television or any internet or anything. And no one spoke English around us, and we just moved rapidly from Perth to Seoul to Korea, so I didn't really have time to speak the language. But I remember, like, my brain, I just felt so happy just to sit there at night time in empty silence and just my own thoughts. I could just be entertained. It was like going to the ballet. It was like going to Steven Spielberg production or Jay Bruckheimer film from the 90s, action movie, just in my own thoughts. It was so satisfying. It was like steak and gravy, potatoes and broccoli, all in one, just in this inside. You don't have to move. It was beautiful. Where was I going with that? But whatever. Okay, news addiction. Oh, yeah. So this Russia situation, everyone's got an opinion on it. But it's crazy because like everyone's moved on. Like the past 2 years has been like a huge roller coaster. I mean, there's been so many sweeping changes, but it's like, that's last year's news, bro. Like, you know, it's all about the Ukraine-Russia conflict now. You know, that's the sweet spot. It's like, slow down a little. I thought the past 2 years were worth discussing. Because, I mean, most people have to admit they haven't really been that honest with their friends and family and neighbours about their true feelings about these things, because it's like the emperor with no clothes. You know that story? You know that story where the emperor gets conned by these swindling salesmen who come in and say, listen, Mr. Emperor, I can make you the world's most glamorous cloak. It's got silk from China. It's got diamonds from Africa. It is a bloody good coat. You will be so fancy, you will blind people on the street. They'll fall off the horse and carriage just because you're sparkling so much. And these are very charismatic salesmen, you know? So the emperor, he kept waiting for these seamsters, for these cloak makers to make him the best cloak, like jacket. And they took their time. They always like, had behind their hidden curtain, they were like with needles and pins and like cranking away, making noise, like, do not disturb us. We are making this great cloak. And eventually they pulled out this thing and they made this little catch-22. If you are intellectually reclined, if you are cognitively impaired, if you are under the bell curve of 100 IQ, if you are an idiot, you won't be able to see this glorious cloak. So they got inside of the ego of the emperor and all his staff saying, if you're a dumb cunt, you're not going to be able to see this jacket. So when they pulled out this jacket, it was invisible, so no one could see it. But no one wanted to admit that they're an idiot. So they lied and said, that, oh, Emperor, you look so fantastic. But he was butt naked, right? He was butt naked. You could see all the cellulite, like you could see every single blemish, every single bad choice he's made over the years, just hugged to his body. And the majority of people in this town as the emperor paraded his coat, everyone's like, oh, you look marvelous, buddy. Sick ones. Yeah, great coat. Fashionable as. Looking pretty snazzy. Right? But then one little boy who just didn't give two hecks, he was true to his heart. He said, mate, you're butt naked. What are you on about? This is absurd. You're walking around the streets showing your meat and two veg. You're showing your package off like it's goddamn freaking Mardi Gras or something. I mean, not that they do that in Mardi Gras. I don't know, I've never been, but I don't imagine I'd be naked, but bad reference. I take that back. But so the moral of the story is that is kind of what's happening right now, whereby no one wants to appear stupid, so no one is acknowledging the elephant in the room, that the emperor's wearing no clothes. And people still, they need an enemy. And people think that Russia is an enemy. Because if you look at Hollywood propaganda, the only time Russians are mentioned in films is if they're some secret agent or a gangster. And that's just not right. Because Russians are extremely diverse people. They have some of the world's best writers. Technologically, they were the first people to go to space. Like, they're smart as fuck. Okay? And dance. They're the most disciplined dancers you'll ever find in the world. And hearty. They beat the goddamn Germans in World War II. You know why? Because they can handle the snow. They weren't little bitches like Germans. Like, no, I want this sausage and this nice cigarette and this dark chocolate. This is hard. No, the Russians are like, we'll get through this. We're going to fucking kill Germans. Yeah. So it's not fair because my partner, she's Russian speaking. Her dad's Russian. Her mum's Jewish Ukrainian. So I don't like all this racism against Russians, but because they're white, it's not considered racist. It's crazy how much melatonin derives culture. It's insane. Blows my mind. But I know a lot of Eastern Ukrainians identify as Russian. And also, I was told that there's Asian provocateurs paid for by the United States in Eastern Ukraine who are stirring the pot, metaphorically speaking, in conflict with Russia, trying to shit stir in order to evoke conflict. I know, I don't think the Reserve Bank operates in Russia. Look, I'm not the brightest button in the drawer, but I'm open. I am very high in openness to experience. So I'm putting myself on the line here. Of course, I'm making some mistakes because who else has got the inclination and the resources to make these kind of videos? Yeah, there's hundreds of thousands, but I mean, I've got something different, you know? I've got my beautiful mother's genetics and my dad's flamboyance, you know? So just give me a go. And obviously, I could be a lot more logical if I was able to use my computer and research articles whilst you are seeing what I'm doing. Because that way I'd be able to back up what I'm saying with hard journal articles that are peer-reviewed, okay? But if you have any kind of discrepancy with any points, because I'm talking about incredibly tough information here. I could be talking about sports. I could be talking about beer. But no, I'm talking about hot topics. Okay? So the issue with Russia and Ukraine, it's a pretty big deal. Okay? But you have to realize that, doesn't it seem like people want there to be a problem? Because then they can still be fat fucks and not work on themselves. Like they want to have an external locus of control, which can be defined as believing that the world is so chaotic, you have no personal responsibility. So you may as well just melt into the couch and just not be a man, not take chances in life, not use the risk analysis, because everything in life is a risk. You could be sitting in your house, never leave the house in 50 years. One day a meteor comes, crashes on your head, crushes your spine, your neck, your skull, goes everywhere, okay? Or you drive to the shops to get some eggs and milk. There's a drunk driver, smashes into the side, okay? You get a concussion. Your rib cage is on the road. So I'm going to move on from this because I will admit 100% I need to research this topic more. It's juicy. It's heavy. And I was actually I was asking Katya if I could have a podcast with her dad, Koila. He, as I said yesterday on the podcast, he was Air Force sergeant for like 10 years. He had a lot of responsibility. He was flying these planes go like 2,000 Ks an hour. You know, he's like a legit, like a full-on hard ass. But I heard on a Jordan Peterson lecture that there's this new technology which allows you to, I think it's Zoom, communicate, and there's instant translation because Koila, he only speaks Russian and I don't speak Russian. But I want to pick his brain because he knows the situation like the back of his hand. My next point was being able to tell when someone is evil. Okay, so call me crazy, but I feel like by the wrinkles on someone's face, by the way they hold themselves, you can tell when someone has more evil than good deeds under their belt. To be honest, there's not really much to go with this, but what do you think about that? Do you think that you can tell when someone is evil? I think we undervalue that because people think they can do evil deeds. Like that book I just bought for my mum and my brother in Christmas, I bought them the same book, like hardcover, with nice cover. It was Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. The premise, the plot line, the basic plot line of that book is there's a young, incredibly handsome man in England who poses for painting and he lives a life of wrongdoing. Like he abuses people, cons them. I think he's even a murderer. It's been a while since I read it. Like he murders for no reason. It's not like he murdered someone who's raping his daughter. Like he murdered people just for the hell of it. And he didn't show much remorse. So the painting would get decrepit and evil, and there would be huge lines on his face and very deep and dark. But he would stay pristine because he had some kind of spell. But what that tells me is that every action you make, every sandwich you eat, every time you break someone's heart, every time you shoot up heroin, every time you drive over someone and leave without seeing if they're okay, that changes who you are. It changes your complexion, changes your body language. It's written all over your face. So people think that they can just focus on going to work, come home, and they can do whatever. They can just get hookers and just drink a bottle of scotch. They can eat nothing but pizza, and then they'll be okay. They can neglect community engagement. They can not call their family. But it'll eventually show. I mean, I'm not that... I've got my bad sides. Like, I've had times where I've spent a lot of money on pizza and drank a bit too much and smoked a lot of cigarettes. So, I'm not as handsome as I could be. But if I think about my life overall, I believe that I've done more good than bad. And it's hard to judge, right? Like, my friend left a voicemail for me last night. saying, like, we're talking about Western morality, and he's referencing this book, Sapiens, which I read a while ago, and it's endorsed by Bill Gates. He was talking about how in the book, Sapiens, how there's a lot of different myths. A lot of cultures in the world have their own mythology, and so we use those myths as a form of moral guidance. So there's no universal way to tell what's right and wrong. Like, good and evil is always changing. But I mean, you base your perception of yourself on your interaction with others. So it's unlikely that I'll be wrong in my judgment of myself, because I base my view of myself on others. So, and I'm just a regular person. Like, I'm not a billionaire or a homeless person. So every time I go to the shops or talk to my neighbour or talk to an old friend, I get a sense of my self-worth. So I realise, like, if I was a hideous, abusing person, I'll get a lot of scowls of people, and eventually it'll be written on my face that I've got a low self-esteem. Like, my posture would change. I'll get like a bit of a hunchback, and I'll get these strange lines, because I'll know in my heart that I've done too much evil, and there's no redemption from that. It's not like we're Catholics anymore. We can just go to a booth and say, mi scusi, and then you go, oh gee, brother. I was studying the Bible a little bit a few months ago, because, why not? And it was saying the idea of God or Jesus can forgive you, but you have to be righteous. You have to really mean it. Like, you may make an impulsive mistake once or twice, get out of jail free card once or twice, but you can't just be like, yeah, ask for forgiveness the next day, just go out there and just rape and pillage again. You have to really know when something's wrong. So, to finalize this point, be careful with your actions, because just because you wear a snazzy suit, you get a fancy haircut, you put on some makeup, you went to a good school, that won't hide your evil doings. That will be written on you, and people will be able to tell. And that will end up you having a worse life. You'll have less happiness if people around you can tell that you're a bad person, because they won't want you around. So my last point today was very similar to the others. It was intuition, being underrated and need to work on it. So when we were on the nature walk, there was a young couple, and I felt like they wanted to have sex with me and my fiancée. I just had this vibe off them. It's kind of strange. Because a few years ago, many years ago now, I was with my ex, and we were at this bar, Brighton, in Mandurah, and there was this young couple, like, tatted up, pretty, good looking, but they asked to come to the hotel and have a foursome, but I wasn't interested, because it's not my scene. I'm a bit vanilla. And then I felt like this couple wanted that today. We walked past, seen a couple of times, and I wouldn't do that, because I haven't lived a full life with my own partner yet. I don't need to do any crazy shit like that, because I'm so excited to just live my life with my own partner. And I haven't even made any real money yet. We haven't had children yet. We haven't gotten married yet. So I'm sure all those experiences will make her more attracted to me, and then we'll have even more of a close connection, because a healthy relationship gets better over time. I don't believe in that you need to have constant new partners, new girlfriends or boyfriends to get that heat. If you got someone special, it gets better, like a fine red wine, not this white wine that just it's only good for a couple of years. So intuition, we don't really talk about it that much, and it hasn't been studied that much. Like, I know when I did my degree at Murdoch, I first started it there 7 years ago in Fremantle, West Australia. The professor, or lecturer they call them, even though she, unit coordinator as well. She was qualified in qualitative rather than quantitative psychology. So she was one of the last few people to do her master's in the ability to read someone based on their mannerisms, body language, tone, pitch of voice. And it's dying because obviously there wasn't enough scientific research to back it up, but that could also be from funding. So when it comes to science, you have to follow the money. Who's making money off the situation? It's actually relative to now, like Dr. Fauci. He's like, I am the science. But the entire premise of science is that nothing is ever true. You can only ever falsify other options. And the entire point of scientific experimentation is to work on previous research, point out the flaws in the previous study, and how would you move on that? Is it the validity? Does it have external validity? Is it replicatable to the population? And you always have to take science with a pinch of salt because the experimenter bias is huge. If someone wants there to be a result, they will do everything to find a result. Now, that's not to say you cannot hold it dear to your heart. Of course, science is everything. It's love, it's life, it's the future, it's now, it's wow. But you cannot take it as religion, as gospel. You cannot marry science. You have to remember that in 10, 20 years' time, there will be new studies and there will be discrepancies found in the previous ones. So just have that in the back of your mind. Yes, use it as your main guide, but don't get married to that study because you have to follow the money, like everything in life. Like Frank Abagnale Jr. had that quote from Catch Me If You Can, with Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio, saying, what's the answer 99 out of 100 questions? It's mullah, it's money. And the other 1 out of 100 questions, the answer was love. I mean, it makes sense why money is so important to us because the possibilities are endless. It's like, it's magic. But I'm going to end it now because I just had this one a day mentality. I was thinking I've got to make one podcast a day, close to an hour. I mean, it's been like 37 minutes. But I want to keep it fresh, I just went for a huge nature hike. Haven't eaten much the past couple of days, so I'm not like too energetic. So I don't want to bore you to death. And so one a day. I'm going to make a podcast a day. And my aim is to eventually make a passive income off it. I mean, obviously it's not my main aim, okay? My main aim is this therapeutic for myself. As I joked about to my neighbor just before, is that it's a form of therapy for me. I need it. I need to have an outlet. I need to feel proud of myself. I need to feel like, I'm going somewhere. And making these little videos, just me talking to this machine, it's very calming because I use my brain a little bit. And there's also a chance. I mean, I remember seeing this episode of Anthony Bourdain and Parts Unknown where he said that he always had this narcissistic, grandiose sense of self-worth where he always felt like when he was a young fella that he was destined for big things. And I kind of feel like that too. I feel like I'm destined for big things. And obviously I could just be narcissistic, grandiose, megalomaniac, but who's going to find out? I mean, I can't afford a shrink, so I can't get diagnosed. But I mean, I did go to a shrink to get extension on exams like a couple of years ago, and they just said that I've got a bit of anxiety, but that's it. So I'm not that fucked up. But yeah, I mean, I think I've watched so many podcasts. Like I spent a year at home in 2020 because I wasn't really allowed to work much, and all I did was watch podcasts. And so I've got a pretty good understanding of what's out there. Smashed them, right? Like Tim Dillon, Joe Rogan, Tim Pool. Like there's dozens others, but yeah, I feel like I've got something, so I'll give it a go. But like, I'd be happy enough long term, like a 2 to 5 year plan. If I can make like a grand a week, that'll be enough for me. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye bye.